What I meant when I said that is that in India, too many people are quite often focused on the short term, or they're focused on charts, chart patterns, double bottom this, double shoulder that. I can't make sense of those. What I can say is that of all the markets in the world that I have investments in, or that I look at, I have positions on in 17 different countries. India is the easiest one in the world on which I can take a long-term view. I can easily make a case in 5 years from now that U.S. stocks will be meaningfully lower than they are today, or I can equally make a strong case that they'll be much higher. India, it's quite clear. 5 years from now, we'll be much higher than where we are today, and that's why it's interesting. Security broadly defined, so personal security, national defense, food security. That's what I mean by security. And you've seen over the past month the global interest in potash companies, fertilizer companies. I think you stay with that. In India directly, the fertilizer companies are a little smaller, but staying on the food security theme, I've been talking about Jain Irrigation for a year and a half now. There's no need to come up with a new idea every month, every week, every day. Jain Irrigation has worked, and it's worked for good reason. I would stay with that. That's part of food security. National security, I think in the West, there's been too much of a concern that because of the financial crisis, funding on defense will be cut. But you'll see the Republicans win in the fall in the U.S., and I think these companies will take off. So I'm long those companies. Another way of being long security and turmoil globally is to be long crude oil. So I'm long futures in December 2010 on crude oil, and I think that's all related to the same theme. I think the underlying fundamentals of telecom remain poor. Let's not look over the last 3 months. Let's look over the last year and a half. I think that's a long enough time horizon. Telcos are the worst performers. The second worst performer in the Nifty over that time period, after Suzlon, which should be number one, is Reliance Communications. It's not profitable growth. Related to telecom, I like certain other companies. On Mobile, Global. I think that's a very interesting company. I think the news surrounding that has driven the stock price down too much. But as far as Bharti and Arcom and Idea, I think you stay away. There's an article in the ET today about Uninor and their parent
but
company.
Telenor minority shareholders saying that the company has probably made a mistake by coming to India.
There are too many players here. I like industries where there's a dominant player, or maybe 2 or 3 leading players, not 8, 10, 12. On Reliance, we're headed in that direction. They're not yet a conglomerate. I think Aditya Birla Nuvo fits that bill more clearly. Reliance, clearly most of the value still comes from a core 2 or 3 businesses. And I think in the next 2 to 3 years, it will continue to come from there. However, the reason for the underperformance has been because in those core businesses, things have slowed down a little bit. After having sat on Reliance for about a year, I dumped everything late July, early August. And then last week, when it got back to close to 900, started buying again. I still, you asked me last time, where do I think Reliance is headed? What's the price target? Over a couple of years, I have no idea what's going to happen in 6 months, but over a couple of years, I still see it 40 to 50% higher than where it is today, which is why I buy it. Tires, I'm a little less familiar, but that's one of those industries where there are some leading players, so I think it's easier to invest there. Autos, I was positively surprised by Tata Motors a few months back with their earnings and share price performance. So if you go back from yesterday up till the end of May of last year, when all the frothiness was out of the post-election spike in stock prices, Tata Motors has been the #1 performer. Had you asked me then, I would not have guessed that, because I thought stretched balance sheet, what are they doing with JLR? But the fundamentals are good, and this is why I was saying earlier that in India the fundamentals do matter. Over time they do matter. If the stock prices come up so much, it's because they've done well.
They're doing something right.
So I would stay with that. I think Hero Honda, the recent sell-off in that, if it continues for a little while longer, it presents a buying opportunity.